So Alia, do I say it correctly? Is it Alia?
It's Alia, so like Malia without the M.
I see, Alia. Thank you for joining me today. It's just me today because, like I just said previously, we're a small business and sometimes you have to tag team it. So Lisa is working on some of the urgent stuff while I'm able to speak to you today. So yeah, again, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, so it would be great for you to introduce yourself and tell the listeners who you are, what you do, where you're based.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'd really love to have a pre-chat to you, so thank you for that. So my name's Alia Coster. I'm the self-confessed communications queen. I'm based in Manchester. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a writer, published author. I'm a communications coach, and all things communications, really.
And can I start by asking you what made you go into the field of communication? What interested you about it?
Well, I flip-flopped throughout my career. I had a really interesting story and I kind of fell into it. So I've been working for 2 decades. I'm 32 now. I started working when I was 12. I was running my first shop by age 14. I had 5 jobs when I was 15. So I was always very entrepreneurial, always had lots of things going on. I started my first business at 21, and it brought me to a position where I had a lot of my dog's underneath the table. I had a lot of experience and insight, and I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it. So I found myself in a situation when I was 26, and I had to kind of move on from where I was in Thailand. I got myself a bit trapped in a situation, and I didn't want to kind of explain to everyone back home what was going on. I was embarrassed. So I thought, right, I want to find a career, find a business that I can do for myself. I don't want to go back to working for anybody else. And I didn't want to do a TEFL course, which is what everybody else was doing. So they were teaching English, which is fine. I just didn't want to do that. And so I kind of had this introspective look and think, what is it that I love doing? What am I passionate about? And when I started traveling out in Thailand in the first place, I started a travel blog. Terribly cliche, I know. But I realized that I really enjoyed writing, but I'd never done it professionally. I just did it for fun. So I found this internship in the south of Thailand, and it was great because you lived on a beach, you were fed twice a day. So at the time, I was super skinny, which was fantastic. And you just learn how to write. So every week you'd have professionals join. So there'd be authors, there'd be other writers, there'd be other marketers. And you were working dusk till dawn, working on a client. And it wasn't exactly... it wasn't hard because some days you'd be sat on a beach, you'd be sipping from a coconut, but you'd be writing. And I really, really, really found that I loved it. So after months of being in this internship and working on clients like Calvin Klein, Cathay Pacific, I would look at kind of the work I was doing, work I was producing. I think, you know what? I could do this much better myself. So I did. And so did that 6 years ago. I made the absolute worst WordPress website you could ever imagine. I don't know how I made any money, but I just ended up reaching out to my connections and saying, hey, look, I'm pretty good with words. Is there any way that I can help you? And that's kind of snowballed, really. So as a business now, what we do is completely grown from writing content. We still do that, but we've moved more into the communication space. And so everything that we do is about making people better communicators, helping people develop a better, self-awareness around the way that we communicate. Because I kind of noticed that there was this flaw that a lot of us have, and it's not surprising because what happens is most of us will go to school, and then all of a sudden we end up in the workplace, right? And so nobody taught us how to move from one space to the next. Nobody taught us how to be interesting. How do you communicate with your peers? How do you get on with all these different personality types, right? Nobody taught us how to deliver good news, deliver bad news, sell to people, how to be a leader, how to be a manager. We're just expected to move into these spaces now in the workplace and just to be able to communicate. And actually, it's quite a fundamental skill that needs development. And so my kind of love of communication really stemmed from noticing that gap and working with people just to help them, be better at it.
And is it just, I say just, communicating, we use words, don't we? So the words that we use define how other people understand us to be. In that space of communication, how do you teach people to be better communicators with
So our business is called the Four Pillars Group, and we use a 4-pillar philosophy that we've developed. And the very first step is awareness. Now, you can't teach awareness, but you can open the door to it. Okay, so there's two parts of it. There's self-awareness and there's awareness of others. So what's kind of happening at the moment in terms of miscommunication and when people butt heads and there's challenges, it's because we don't realize and we're not really paying enough attention to how we show up. Now, that's not to say we're showing up badly or we're showing up aggressive or we're necessarily doing anything wrong, for example. But when we have a better understanding of our drivers, so, what our values are, what's our personality type, what's our communication style. And then once we know those things and we start to be able to learn how to read the room better and how to know, okay, well, I'm quite loud, I speak quite fast and I'm quite assertive. But if the person I'm speaking to is the opposite of that, they're going to instantly, when I come into the room, think, ugh. And, it's not about changing who you are. It's not about you being wrong or anything that you're doing is bad. It's just that we're not kind of considering other people, and so it's not really flowing. And so in that same scenario, if I am that kind of direct and loud person and I know that the person I'm speaking to is the opposite, I can dial into that space. It's not being false, it's just being considerate. If I know I can soften my language and I can slow down a little and I can maybe not be so aggressive with the words that I use, because the person I'm trying to talk to, if I want to help them, I'm trying to get something for them, then I can help them if they can hear me. And it's my job, not their job, to make that more comfortable.
And it's your job because you've gone to them and it's not the other way around. I'm just trying to see, who takes the responsibility of how to approach that situation. Is it both people? Is it the person who's trying to get something from the other person? Who goes in there with the to set the tone? Because if you're quite loud and you notice the other person isn't, you kind of adjust yourself. But the other person, do they also have to make that adjustment?
Well, we all do need to be considerate of others. And it's certainly about being aware of others as well. So it's knowing if you are that quiet, kind of meek character, knowing that sometimes that confidence isn't always arrogance. And there is a responsibility to be able to see people kind of where they're at. And if they are saying something assertively, it's also being able to listen effectively. It's not listening without emotions, it's listening kind of with our ears, if you like, listening to the words that they're saying and kind of reading that person's body language. But if we are, something you said there about trying to get something out of the other person, that sounds quite manipulative. And even if it's just it's asking them a question, that is still getting something. But yeah, if you are initiating that, then it is your responsibility.
I see.
If it's a different situation, like a friendship circle, a relationship, client, boss, or however that looks like, then both of us have a responsibility to be better communicators with each other.
And I guess when you're going into like a business setting and
Yeah.
you have a business meeting, you'd hope that you have done your homework a little bit and kind of know a little bit about the personalities of the people that you are going to visit. Because even us meeting here, and obviously we know each other from LinkedIn, so you can get a little bit of the style and understanding of a person, which is a little bit of a piece of research that you do before you actually meet someone, right? So you know what you're going into essentially.
Exactly. If it's a cold setting, and by cold I mean someone you don't already know, even if it is someone you might not be aware of it. But kind of what I teach in my philosophy and what people can do as the first step of this awareness is think about different personality types. So it might be so for example, we do a 4-color system. So we know we use red, blue, yellow, green. Everybody's going to have different versions of this, or they might have no idea what we're talking about. If I use 2 examples, a red person might be interested in success, achievement, getting things done, and a green person would be all about the numbers, the statistics. So you might have like a boss in the red, and then you might have a finance director, for example, in the green. And so if you come into a meeting and you're talking as a red person all about the success, all about what we're going to achieve, the finance person doesn't care about that. They care about the numbers, they care about the facts, they care about the statistics. And so that meeting's going to erupt because neither are going to feel heard if they're just talking about the things that are important to them. So instead, as that red person, if what's important to you is about talk about success, do it in a numbers way, do it in a statistics way, do it in a way that's the language of the person that you're speaking to. You know, if that person is someone that cares about the betterment of others, if they care about sustainability, then talk about that, talk to them. You know, it's not about being manipulative, it's about, okay, how can I direct my real message in a way that they're going to hear it? And so you can do that so easily. You can do that by just listening to the stories that people tell. You can look on their social media, you know, you can see the things that they're putting out. If they're putting out videos, things that they talk about. If they talk about their family a lot, they're family orientated. Okay, how can I make this message that's important to, you know, family orientation? If they're talking about you know, adventure and being out there and you know, being nomadic, how does this tie into something that they're passionate about? And in a business setting, this is something that we can do quite a lot, whether it's, you know, customer services, sales, or whether it's just talking to each other.
Yeah. And again, that, you know, even the sense that someone has taken the time to look at you in a little bit more of a holistic way, and then approaches you in a space, like you say, where you are at, family, kids, to to feel somebody come into your space like that will initially give you a sense of gratitude, right? It's like, oh wow, this person has made a little bit of an effort to come to me with something, or in a communication style that is relevant to me.
Sure. It's one of those things that you won't notice it until afterwards, because you'll more notice somebody clashing because you'll just think they're an idiot and you just think, don't like this person, don't want to work with this person. But it's those interactions that feel so effortless and they leave you feeling charged and positive and happy. You think, yeah, I really enjoyed that. That's a good indication that you know, you're meeting each other at the right level.
Yeah, it's interesting that, because from what you're saying, it kind of implies that everybody can communicate with everybody in a constructive way, whereas I always wonder if we should try and communicate and serve and be available for everybody, or if we, like you say, you meet somebody and you just hit it off and clearly your communication styles align, and that's just great, you're fit to work together, or if it really is a, we need to learn how to approach people in their space better to work together better. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, is everybody fit to work with everybody, or should we just find our people and just stick with those people?
I think that's a really good question. It's a very layered question, because what I teach and just having awareness around communication is just a tool in your toolbox. So just because I believe, yes, you can learn how to speak to everybody, but just because you can doesn't necessarily mean that you should. I have met people where I have found myself dialing into them. Don't agree with them. I don't agree with their point of view. I do think they're an idiot. And at least the communication is comfortable, but then I can make that decision. Okay, do I even want this interaction? You know, sometimes there are, you know, toxic people, toxic environments, and it's not about, you don't, just because you can speak to everyone doesn't mean you have to. It just makes things a little bit easier and a bit smoother. And then off the back of that, it's not like a one and done. You can choose, do I even want this interaction? Because if you don't, just walk away from it. We don't have to be friends with everyone. We don't have to be clients with everybody. It just leaves those interactions there. It doesn't create then further negativity. It doesn't kind of build on and leave you in a, you know, bad mood all day, and you can move on from that. So it gives you the choice. It gives you the power and the choice to decide what interactions you want to step into and which ones you can walk away from, but in a productive way.
Can you recall a previous conversation, maybe not so long ago, that left you feeling grateful?
Now you put me on the spot. Um, I think just generally with my friends, my friends leave me feeling quite grateful, because being a communication coach myself. Obviously I've got quite high standards with communication, and I feel myself like, for people that are in my inner circle, it's important to me that I feel seen and heard. And there's an amazing Maya Angelou quote that I love. And it's that people won't remember what you said or what you did, but they will remember how you made them feel. And that's what I was referring to before, where some interactions leave you with a really positive, lasting impact. And so with my friends, it's very much okay. They just get it. So you can tell the story and you'll explain what's happened, and they'll say, oh, it sounds like XYZ. And it's like, yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying to you. And that makes me feel so grateful that I don't have to then do the opposite. I don't have to, the story's been misinterpreted and it drains the soul out of you. You have to kind of educate someone before you can explain, and then they still can't empathize with you. So feeling seen and feeling heard by people, whether it's friends or whether it's other people, that makes me feel really grateful.
And that kind of leads me on to a next question about listening.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about your interaction with your friends, and obviously, I mean, I'm going to assume that these are year-long relationships where, you know, there's a really deep understanding of who you are. But how important is listening in being understand and you know, and understood and being heard?
Oh, it's so important. I mean, there is a layer of, like, some of my friends I've known for not very long because I move around a lot, and some friends I've known like my whole life. So yeah, the ones that I have known longer, naturally, you just don't have to explain anything. But I've lived in Manchester this time for a year, and I've got friendships within that, and they just get it. And there is a correlation between listening and gratitude, because if we're not being aware, if we're not listening to the situation in front of us, we don't know what to be grateful for, right? So I mean, bit of a random personal story, but I had this ex who had no awareness. He was completely wrapped up in himself, and it diminished his ability to show any gratitude to anyone around him. So I remember this one time, I mean, it was really early on in the relationship, and he was working all weekend, and he was upset that he wasn't eating very well, and he wasn't, getting much time to eat good food, because fitness was important to him. And I was going to go past his house anyway. And I thought, you know what I'll do? I'll spend my morning making him some food, right? Nothing major. And so I made him like his favorite lunch, his favorite dinner, made him some breakfast, dropped it off and just said, look, I know that you're not feeling like you can look after yourself too well right now. I thought I'd do this for you. No big deal. And off I went. And to this day, he was convinced that I just didn't trust him, or I showed up because I had an ulterior motive. So instead of listening to the words I said, which was, I want to take care of you, he's just kind of gone on to a different tangent. And because he didn't see the good thing that's happened, the good thing I did, to this day, he's not said thank you. And, that sounds a bit abstract, and it's quite an extreme version to prove my point. And it wasn't about the thank you. It was the fact that I did something nice because I wanted to. And because he didn't listen, he's like, his mindset's over here. And that happens so much in conversation and in situations, that people will tell us, this is what I'm trying to do for you. This is what I feel. This is what I think. And I want to do this goodness for you. And whether it's kind of ego, whether we're wrapped up in ourselves, or we're projecting past trauma, or we're just not present, we're not seeing the good thing in front of us. And when we're blocked by that, we cannot show gratitude. And so if we kind of get over sorry, if we learn to get over ourselves a little bit, we kind of put our ego to one side, we listen to people, and we actually observe, and we're aware of our surroundings, then we can truly dial into gratitude.
Do you think it's a cultural thing, that because when you just told your story, and obviously you're saying something that for you, that there are no ulterior motives. You just want to go and do something nice for someone you care about. Yet it's interpreted as with suspicion. And I just wonder if it's a British somehow cultural thing as well, to not always say 100% what you mean. People are quite we have this expression in the Netherlands where you're putting words in other people's mouths. Like you're saying what people say, what you think you want to hear, not necessarily what they want to say. So I'm just wondering if the British way of communicating is a little bit less straightforward than, say, an American way of communicating.
Okay, so twofold on that one. One, I can't really comment whether it's a cultural thing or not because I only know my own culture. So I don't know if it's a person thing. But I would say as a neurodiverse woman, I struggle with abstract anyway. So I hate that. I cannot read between the lines. And you are right. It's a massive thing. Don't know if it's just in this country, but it definitely happens here. Of, like you say, people will kind of just let you assume, they'll let you read between the lines, they won't say what they've got to say, whether it's, you know, being stiff upper lip, whether it's just not wanting to say the direct thing, because some people are very risk adverse. And this ties back to this awareness piece, right? Because if you become aware that you are not a very good communicator because you're not saying what you mean, like, it's impossible for people to read you if you're not being direct. So that's where this onus comes back to. It's your responsibility to, you know, say what you mean, to show up in the way that you said, show up in the way that you intend to, because then there's no other situation other than a miscommunication that's going to happen. Because if you leave everything to interpretation, you know, there could be 50 million answers. And so I'm not necessarily answering your question about culture, but it is an individual thing, I would say. If you are somebody that isn't very direct, you are probably leading yourself to interpretation of miscommunication and stopping that kind of opportunity for listening and kindness and gratitude to show up in your life. So they're all linked.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because a lot of the times people will feel like they're doing a kind thing by how do I say this? What's the right word? They're doing a kind thing by delivering a particular topic in a soft way, to have it land softly, with the result being that it might not land at all because it was actually too soft.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to go in like a freight train and just, you know, run over somebody again with your cold, harsh, honest truth kind of thing, even though, you know, the kindness sometimes is to be more direct and be more straight to the point. And but it's tough sometimes to deliver things like that.
Yeah, and it's you are completely right. It's trying to be so subtle that it's not even seen. And the issue there, or the solution there rather, is learning better skills. So learn better skills to deliver different pieces of information. So there's if it's a difficult conversation, there's a book I read that's amazing. It's called Radical Candor. I can't remember who it's by, but it's a lady. I think she was kind of a VP in Google, or one of the, you know, the big tech giants. And it's about that. It's about delivering that news, and it talks about ways that's not great. So like taking the mickey out of someone, or like you say, going like a bull in the china shop, or like kind of like whispering but not telling them. And there is a way, radically candid, just to kind of buff it out, even if it's using a technique called, if I swear, the shit sandwich, where you say something positive, you deliver the news, and then obviously you end it off. And it's using all these different tools that I've talked about in the call. So first of all, if you're aware of the other person, you've got a good idea of whether or not they're going to be able to take the news. And it's not necessarily being about giving them a hard time. It's okay, what's the solution off the back of it? So a thing happened, how can we move forward? So if you're family orientated, if you're success orientated, if you're money orientated, if you're, you know, just a nice person that likes to help people around you, you know, this has been bad because, but this is how we do something better, and as a result, this is what you'll get, kind of thing. And so, you know, all these different issues of, if we're not wanting to say something, we're trying to be too nice, there are other ways to do it that have a better outcome. Because, you know, exactly as you say, what might sound like a kindness isn't. And an example in this book, actually, that's just come to mind, is she was talking about a situation I'm saying this, so I might not be completely accurate to the book, so bear with me. But she was someone's manager, and there was a guy in her team, and he wasn't very good. And she didn't want to hurt his feelings, so he would make mistakes, and she would fix them. And one day she got sick of him making the mistakes, and she couldn't have it on the team anymore, so she fired him. And he was completely shocked because he had no idea that he wasn't doing a good job. And on his way out, he said, "Well, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you feed back to me that I was making a mistake so I could do something about it and fix it?" And when we are trying to be too subtle and we're not telling people, we don't give people the chance to grow. So we stifle so many things. And so just because we're scared we might hurt someone, why don't we let them make that decision? As long as we're not clumsy, we're making the effort to proactively and communicate with intent. You know, we're not going to get it right, and it's not always going to be received well, but it'd probably be a lot better than we're at now.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Sometimes, kindness is the longer route rather than the short route. Yeah, I get that. So bringing it back a little bit to gratitude, I'm always interested to hear people's stories around, you know, something that might have happened in your life that you see to be a misfortune, or that other people might look at and see misfortune, whereas, you know, you now look upon as something that you're grateful for.
What am I grateful for? Well, I'd probably say my journey, to be honest. So kind of growing up, I didn't have the best, start to life, and I left home at 16, which was, it was pretty tough. And I grew up in a pretty ignorant household. Bearing in mind we're quite an open world now, and so I had a lot of influences with not much emotional intelligence and not much general intelligence. And so I had really bad habits. I don't think I was a particularly nice person. I had good intention, but I grew up with not a great influence around me. And so I worked really, really hard on not being that person anymore. And I used to kind of grow up thinking, I hated my childhood. I was really mad at my childhood. I didn't think it was fair. And to be honest, now I think it's my biggest strength. And I had this epiphany, if you like, where with Tony Robbins, I did a lot of therapy and a lot of mindset coaching. And he said this thing that it was so profound to me at the time. And it really struck a chord with me. And he said that if his mum was any different, then he wouldn't be the man that he is today. And I don't know if you know Tony Robbins, inspirational mindset coach. He's incredible, and he's got the best mind. I love him. And him saying this, sorry about that. Him saying this really struck a chord with me. It was like a smack in the face of reality, because I felt the same. Like, I'm not going to badmouth them. They're still just people. But reality is my parents did a really bad job. And, to a point I had to remove myself from that situation. And where I always grew up thinking, I wish it was different. Now I don't. Now I'm really grateful that my journey was the journey that it was, because like Tony Robbins, if anything had been different, I wouldn't be the woman I am today. And, everything I do, I've got 3 businesses. 1, I help dogs. 2, I help people. I help people grow. I help people have a better quality of life. And I'm grateful for that. I'm proud that I can do that. So, I'm grateful for the journey that brought me here today.
That's amazing. I mean, that's not many people who can embody it like that. I think, that seems like a huge hurdle to jump. I think to go from that's not fair to I'm grateful for this.
It was painful, but it was worth it.
Yeah. Gosh, we're already nearly at 30 minutes. Can I ask you the final question, is which we ask everybody, is if you could mention anybody in this, entire world, if you met them, if you haven't met them, who you are grateful for, could you let us know who that is and why?
Yeah. Definitely my team. So just kind of going on from that journey. So I love obviously my own hobbies and having my own life, but I'm obsessed with business, and having 3 of them, it takes up a lot of time. But it's not just me, it's my team. So it's Ellie that works with me, it's Sam that works with me, even people that kind of help my quality of life. So like my VA, my accountant, my lawyer, anyone that makes my life possible now. I'm entirely grateful for them, because I really, really, really couldn't do it without them.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, and your stories and your wisdom. I definitely picked up some little nuggets along this conversation, and I'm gonna check out that book that you mentioned. That sounds like one to read.
We can put it in the comments later, because it's a really good book, actually.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I will make sure that the details of all your businesses, all your social handles and everything are to be found in the comments.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me.
No worries. All right.